Africa rise. Africa rise. Hey. Oh, you've been hard. Your past's been hard. I know you're bitter. You let it linger. Years you've lost, pains you've stored. Do you not see it? God has a purpose for you. I am doing a new thing. See now it springs up, waves in the desert, streams in the wasteland, doing a new thing. See now it springs up right now, oh Africa, do you perceive it? Eh, eh. What once was lost, God is restoring. Open your eyes now, receive His outpouring. Wisdom and might, power from on high. Do you not see it? God has revealed it to you. I am doing a new thing. See now it springs up, waves in the desert, streams in the wasteland, doing a new thing. See now it springs up right now, oh Africa, do you perceive it? Doing a new thing. See now it springs up, waves in the desert, streams in the wasteland, doing a new thing. See now it springs up right now, oh Africa, do you perceive it? Yelele. He says, I know the plans I have for you, to give you hope, to prosper you, restore you, get ready, rise up, declares the Lord. I know the plans I have for you, to give you hope, to prosper you, restore you, get ready, rise up, declares the Lord. I know the plans I have for you, to prosper you, restore you, get ready, rise up, declares the Lord. Your maker, declares the Lord. Your savior, declares the Lord. Your helper, defender, strong tower in time of need, Africa. Yeah. See now it springs right now, right here. He's doing it for you. Rise up. See now it springs right now. He's doing it for you, Africa. Doing a new thing. Do you see now it springs up, waves in the desert, streams in the wasteland, doing a new thing. See now it springs up right now, oh Africa. Perceive it. Yeah, come on. Eleri, Mungulondi, Emeri, Ayeri, Egwoki, Africa, Elondi, Africa. This is your time, your moment. Hey, God has called you for this. Yeah, Africa. Hey, Africa, rise.
Good morning and welcome to today's webinar. Welcome to today's webinar, proudly brought to you by PSave. And we are looking forward to sharing with you a number of nuggets on how to survive in this tough financial economy. Yeah, my name is Jessica Layado Kamujisha, and I will be your host this morning. And I can assure you that PSAVE has quite a bit in store for you around financial literacy this morning. It's good to have you on board with us. We'll continue to wait to build a bit of rapport, but even as we do so, maybe we'll just go ahead and introduce the people who are on the call, who are going to lead us through this talk on financial literacy. So we have some powerful speakers in the house this morning who will definitely be sharing their heart with us on how to navigate your finances as a business, as an individual, as a company, as an organization, as a home. They'll just be sharing with us general financial principles that cut across all these different spheres. So this morning, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce to us the CEO of PSAVE, an amazing young woman who is doing quite amazing things with PSAVE. Mrs. Kazida Rosette is the CEO of PSAVE, and she holds a master's in business administration. She also holds a postgraduate in business administration and a bachelor in psychology and a postgraduate diploma in business administration. And she's been working with financial institutions for over 10 years. I think that she is very well placed to also give us a bit of her mind on how to navigate finances. So join me this morning as we welcome Rosette to just come and say a few things to us and to also open this webinar before we go right into listening to the panelists. So welcome, Rosette. We are excited to be here to listen to what PSAVE has for us this morning.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for the brief introduction, and welcome members, welcome our panelists of the day. Thank you for accepting our invitation to be our panelists this morning. And just a brief to the members. During our annual general meeting that was held in March, members resolved that PSAVE registers as a multi-purpose cooperative so that we can grow more of our investment arms in a time like this, so that we can widen our investments, so that we can bring more interest to our members, which was done. We're able to get our certificate last month, in the month of August, and we thank God for that milestone. So we believe that our investments are going to increase as PSAVE, and even as we continue going towards the end of this year, we believe that we'll have more investments, be able to invest in land and so many other things that will come along the way. I want to also thank our members for saving, for paying up their loans, even in such an economic environment that we are in, which is so uncertain. You cannot know what is going to happen tomorrow or the next day, but we want to thank you that your businesses have still strived even during this time, because we see your savings coming and the faithful ones who have been able to pay back their loans. We want also to thank and encourage even those ones who are not paying up their loans, that they will be able to pay on their loans. As we said, we have a number of different products. I think in a time like this, I would encourage as many members to open up our target savings account, so that you can be able to meet your end of year targets. And also, we know that right now it is a time when kids are going back to school. In case you need to use one of our facilities, the loan product, the school fees product, kindly sign up. We are willing to help with good interest rates. Yeah, better than those that are in the market around, but want to encourage you and thank you so much. And even as we go through this discussion on how to remain afloat in this unstable economy, I believe that we will sharpen our minds and we'll do business in a different way, and just asking questions as much as possible, so that by the time we finish this financial literacy session, you would have grown more into your business and something new would have come into your mind. And I want to thank you all, and I encourage you to continue investing and saving with with PSAFE Circle. Otherwise, a very good morning to you, and I hand over to our panelists. I hand over to Jessica at this point, our moderator.
Thank you, Rosette. Thank you for bringing us up to speed on the many different products that PSAFE has to offer. Yeah, so like I was saying earlier on, we have two awesome panelists this morning who are going to be sharing with us a number of financial nuggets on how to survive in this economy. You know, like Rosette was saying, it's been really, it's been tough for everyone, you know, following COVID and the way that it has impacted people's businesses and people's finances. And despite what has happened through the COVID season and after, you know, post-COVID season, we still have seen that there are a number of businesses that have stood and that continue to stand and thrive. And so this morning, we would like to hear from people who have been or who are in business and who are involved with these institutions, to hear from them what strategies they have employed, what has helped them, what has not helped, what has caused the challenges, and where the strong points are, and maybe how to help individuals, you know, survive in a season like this, but also not just survive, but thrive. So I see that we are still building rapport. I'd encourage us to share the link as much as possible, because you don't want your friends to miss out on the gold that is being shared here this morning. So I don't know, just drop the link and the poster in a group somewhere, in a WhatsApp group, you know, send it to your friends, to your family, to even your enemies, the ones you consider, you know, not your friends. Please send them the link so that we can all partake of this knowledge and all gain from it, because I can assure you that it's going to be worth it. So while we share the link, I was saying we have two amazing panelists with us in the house. This morning, we have two gentlemen, and the other is Mr. Stephen Ochoa. While we get to it, let me just introduce myself again. My name is Jessica Layado Kamujusha, and I'm excited to be hosting this webinar this morning. I'm very, what's the word, optimistic about the things that I'm going to pick from just listening to these two amazing gentlemen. And while you listen to them, in the event that you have questions, maybe questions that you have come with even before the session, you can share those in the chat section. And if there are questions that, you know, maybe you came with questions, then while the panelists were speaking, they got answered, but then, you know, a number of other questions came up, you still can't share those in the chat section. It's okay if the question is specific, to your situation, but it's also okay if the question is generic, if it's a wide question. Feel free as much as possible to share those in the chat section. So for now, let me get right into introducing our first panelist, Mr. Patrick Mbazira. Mr. Patrick Mbazira attained UDBS from Nakawa, now moves. He has a partial ACCA qualification. He's going to explain to us what these words mean, especially if we are not getting them entirely. He has a partial ACCA qualification with over 15 years of experience in the finance environment. He's now pursuing a DIU at Insurance Training College, leading to a CII. Wow. He's an insurance expert, a financial controller, an advisor, and a leader. He has over 23 years of experience in insurance and is an experienced marketer and TOT expert. I'll suppose that TOT means trainer of trainers, of trainees, of trainers. Yes, anyway, too. He'll still come and clarify for us. He also serves as a finance director at ISILO Financial Services Limited. Patrick is the chairperson, investment committee of Toweka Sacco in Mutundwe, a financial advisor in several investment clubs around the country. He further serves as a church leader, working as a chairperson of Fathers Union at St. Stephen's Church of Uganda, Mutundwe, as well as an assistant head of laity at the same church. He always says building financial sustainability is his calling. So join me this morning as we welcome Mr. Patrick Mbazira to lead us through a session of financial literacy. Welcome, Patrick. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for those kind remarks. Indeed, the environment as we speak now is very unstable. There's so many things that have happened. Little did we know we would not be able to move at a particular point in time. And therefore, all these sessions are meant to prepare us a little much better should it happen next time. Because it was a first, it was really a challenge. And indeed, there was a lot of guesswork. A lot had been written about stability, financial management, and all that. But it's very unfortunate that when this hit us, there was very little knowledge about how we can navigate through. Maybe the first thing is we want to know what has led to this current economic situation. Is it about to change? Can we do anything about it? Or we'll just talk about it and that's it? At one point, we can say we believe in miracles, and then when we talk about miracles, that means you sit back until the miracle happens. One of the reasons why we're here is to see that when things happen, we're able to break through, given the different experiences of different individuals and what they've done when things like these happen. And allow me to say, if we're going to wait for miracles to happen, we would be a little lazy. We believe in miracles, but there's that hard work that is expected. So when we say a financial situation or a tough or unstable economic situation, we're saying things are not the way we expect them to be. There were projections. People usually do budgets, they do short-term goals and then the long-term goals, strategic plans. And there's where you're supposed or you expect to be. And when the time comes and you're not there, those are the questions you want to answer. The solutions have to come through. And as believers, we don't always want to skip the biblical approach to this. And then on the other side, we have the contemporary or what everyone else would do. But indeed, we cannot rule out the fact that we're guided by God. In all this, we think the two approaches, if applied well, we can be able to achieve what we anticipated to do. Like I said, the plans are always done, and then we just keep monitoring and eventually evaluate and see if we've gotten to where we had planned to be. So if I'm looking at the biblical approach, indeed, when the world was created, there was nothing. It was with no shape. So when you look at Genesis 1:28, let me use that chapter, because indeed, when I look at the biblical approach, I'm saying we're guided by God. In several instances, the wise men have actually sought God's guidance. But Genesis 1:28 gives us the authority. After being blessed, it says, God blessed them. Let me read it clearly. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful, multiply, replenish the earth, subdue it, and have dominion, etc., etc., etc. So it's a clear command. It's instructions. It's before you. Multiply it. Being fruitful means be productive. If we do nothing, that means you're not working. So therefore, the productivity that is required of us is what is going to change what is in front of us. So in a situation like we're in, maybe if I went back during the COVID pandemic, where nothing was being done, everyone is at home, but things had to go on. People fell sick away from COVID. We had people with heart attacks. We had other illnesses. People had to eat food. There was also need to know what was going on. So anybody who had to do something had to work within the situation that was pertaining by then. So when the command says be fruitful, it says produce. So if you're not going to produce, or you're not going to move, the situation is that bad and you're doing nothing. So what we saw during that time was the creativity. And I'm telling you, it's because of that now I can be wherever I am and I'm able to send this. Although the technology existed then, but it was never appreciated until the lockdown came. People needed to continue discussing. They needed to see how they can steer the countries forward. We had so many meetings going on, but from home. Indeed, I believe very few people have left home as we speak now, and we're able to do this. So be productive. When we're in a situation where it was that bad and we're producing, it is so interesting to note that indeed during that time we have people who actually were able to make a killing. While it was at a standstill, people locked in their houses, there is a group of individuals who I believe now would say, I wish COVID remained. So with that command, it brought out the idea of creativity. We want to imagine when things are bad, there is no economic activity, and therefore poverty strikes in. If poverty does not give you creativity, innovation, then we have something wrong. We begin with the basics, where I'm looking at it as simple as it is, but when you transform it, it is going to give us what we have been looking for, or the solution to keeping afloat when things are not that good. So, ladies and gentlemen on the call, it is clear that it was so bad then, but even after, we still have a situation, the aftermath of that big effect. Incidentally, when we talk about COVID and we say it's still with us, yes, because its effects are still biting. Several people were laid off. And then what happened? Organizations folded, businesses stopped. And now, the Genesis 1:28 says, be productive. And you are in a situation where you needed to be doing something, and the creativity didn't come to you. So in simple terms, we at times complicate these things with a lot of economic and financial jargon, and we forget how simple it can be. And therefore, when I present it with simplicity, it is meant to reignite. And let me say, you have had this before. Every time we meet, we're trying to encourage ourselves. That's why we regularly go to church on Sunday. If we know the commandments, we know how to relate with our neighbors. Why then would we have to even congregate? So if we kept away, we'll not get what is supposed to push us forward and get away from this unstable economic situation. So the fruitfulness will call for the key things around it. innovation, because the production is coming from a problem where you're giving a solution. And indeed, we're paid for what we think outside the usual. And therefore, anybody who has come up with a solution has been able to move forward. And when it's unstable, it probably could hit a few, and those few are those who have actually not thought through the opportunities that are available. Life gives us two situations, and indeed, we're supposed to see where the opportunity is and grab it. This verse actually pushes you away from laziness. Yeah. Let me use another biblical, because I want to do the biblical and then go the other side. That is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through God who strengthens me. So there's a doing, and who enables? That's God. So essentially, there's what to do, and where do you go? To God. Looking at doing, innovation, and creativity, I want to look at people in the Bible who also had a challenge. You're given a kingdom to reign over, and then you don't have the knowledge, the wisdom, and understanding. When whatever happened way back, Solomon had to, of course, God appeared to him in a dream and asked him, what should I do for you? Having done all that was unpleasant to God, this man was in a way rewarded. What should I do for you? And he said, he wants wisdom. So this is what we're actually getting this morning. In a biblical sense, when you get the knowledge, you're able to use it and move forward. So the knowledge we keep seeking is what is going to steer us into, or at the bare minimum, to stay afloat. But there's no reason why you should just stay afloat and not soar. Meaning that when we get what we get and do it better or differently, we're not just supposed to stay afloat, but indeed fly high. So, ladies and gentlemen, on the biblical approach, it is so interesting that we open these verses and then go through them and then proceed to the next, and we have not got the applicability around them. But that's clearly it. When you're told to be fruitful, you are supposed to multiply and then replenish. That is about Genesis 1:28. So the question was, what got us here? How can we get, how can we maneuver? How did we, because we have so many things that we're referring to right now. When the prices go high, people have talked about the war in Ukraine, and then some other people are still making money given the war in Ukraine. Now, I want to get to the usual, where all of us are tussling it out on a daily, away from the biblical. You are running a company. Indeed, PSAV is one of those institutions that I've come to admire. When you have the structures in place, that means you have actually set out to find a way of managing a profitable circle. You actually, let me mention this. I met a young lady on a bus from Gulu, and we had a talk. She got interested in what we were sharing, and we shared experiences of a circle where I'm chairman, business committee, or the investment arm of our circle in Mutundwe. It is Toweka Mutundwe Circle. But in all that, I think the approach to doing business probably was something she wanted to pick, and here we are. But as an individual first, you want to work on yourself to be able to give something, because you can't give what you have, what you don't have. What you have is what you give. So if you can't have it, can you look around and, implement it? In the contemporary world, or in our day-to-day living, we have things that we have to look at to be able to navigate through. When things are bad, do you throw a party? There's a particular insurance company that it wound up. It's so interesting that the global group was doing so badly, but locally, guys were really hitting their targets, and they had parties every month. They've hit their targets. It was just, contradicting where globally things are not doing well, and locally people were doing well. Eventually it folded, it tried to come back. Now, what do you do when things are not good? One thing is, we say we delay instant gratification. There are those nice things that you want to do now. Why would we do something today when the situation is not good. The economic situation is wanting. We really want to look at a situation where if things are okay, that's when we can call for being lavish and all that. Delaying this is at a pain for later gains. Yes, like I said, we know all this, but when we keep revisiting them, we remind ourselves of what we are not doing right now, such that we are able to stay afloat. It's as simple as that. It comes with the sacrifice. Honestly, if you are a person in an economy where things are not good and you hear people getting bonuses, I can still now clearly say it. When the AIG International got a bailout, the executives gave themselves bonuses. Now we're looking at a situation which is not good. After the credit crunch, you did not expect anyone to get a bonus if government has gone out of its way to see that this company stays afloat, injected more capital to ensure that people don't lose jobs. Guys got bonuses. Now, it was a mistake from another mistake, and they didn't last long. So today you do not have an organization which was supposed to be afloat, since it had even gotten a financial boost. Then situations like this call for a lot of listening, learning. Don't stop learning. For those who have come to this call, it's the urge, it is the thirst for more knowledge to see how best we can navigate through this situation. It is learn, learn, and learn. If there is a book about economics, finances, pick it, read it. There's a conference, go. Webinars like this, we've just met somewhere with somebody, you're on a bus, you can pick something from somebody, like by opening up and a discussion comes through. And some people ask intelligent questions because of the problems they have, and they get a solution to that. We don't stop learning. And what you learn is what you implement. And I believe for purposes, okay, I might not give that example, but we want to have competent people in positions to be able to steer organizations ahead. That's why they call for minimum. That means minimum, it's just the basic. Otherwise, over and above, we're still good. PSAVE has a very marvelous CEO. I have listened and I've seen the CV is that. With such experience, you can't go wrong. But despite all that, we have to keep seeking knowledge. Thus, this webinar, we look at it as another way of enriching ourselves. We want to get much more and more and more. I have another point, is practicing to focus on the organization goals. When things are okay, people can afford to take particular risks, which are probably outside our regulation. As SACCOs being regulated by Ministry of Trade, there are certain things that we are not supposed to do. There's a time where you can try to take the risk if you're given a percentage of what you should be able to invest in terms of fixed assets, because maybe the best thing would be to look at near cash, treasury bills, unit trusts. But if you went and invested in fixed assets that you cannot easily liquidate, and the situation is not good, people come for loans and the cash flow is not good, but you have invested somewhere. Now, this is a time where we have to rethink. Situation is bad, and then we are putting our money in something that you cannot easily liquidate. Now, staying focused on the organization goals, in this case, we can also look at our bylaws. What do the bylaws say? How are we guided by the ministry? Because the guidance is supposed to help these SACCOs stay afloat. But those who have taken risks, like a person lending without security because you're very sure this person will bring back the money, you can't do that. I know they'll bring back the money, and then the situation is really tight. If everything is okay, you can dare take the risk. But ordinarily, times being hard, the last thing you want to do is do anything outside the organizational goals or your bylaws and the industry guidelines. So purely in terms of being strict and to the dot. We really have to stay focused on the goals. You've talked about investment. I had the CEO submit on investment in probably land. Yeah. Now, at times when times are really hard, it's very, very important that you do it wisely, which means there should be a little bit of research, well researched ventures. Some of them can be too big, but we need to look at it in a more careful way. You want to do something that is not so complex, that is easy to monitor, where even from your offices, you're able to, from any location without being physically available, you're able to supervise. So it's important that the wise investment looks at those easy and not technical things. People can look, I don't know, PSAFE can say want to go into oil and gas. It's really a new area. Until you're so well versed with it, you might not want to venture there. So we go step by step when things are bad. Whatever it is that we invest in, it is with caution. Call it, if you're going to invest when we are so, we want to be a little risk averse. You don't step in water with both legs, lest you sink. If you have one leg and then you see you're sinking, you could come back. But imagine if you've gone full way. That's another way of ensuring that we stay afloat if things are not smooth. Then about the products that we have. We have had so many people put things on the market, and some of these items indeed are just as they are. Let me just give like coffee. In our economy, we have talked about coffee, and coffee is just coffee. Yet there's also instant coffee. What about if people looked at value addition? So whatever we have, and it's not as basic as it is, even with the kind of loan products that we have, what makes them attractive? Have you talked to the insurance guys and see how they can have bundled products? So what you give to your members maybe could have a life aspect around it. You extend it with the life component. When you take a loan and that's it, imagine the person took out a loan and then, God forbid, they pass on. The effect of that to the circle is probably they have half of the savings or their interest is what you have as security, because probably you give times 2. So they pass on and they have the loan. What about getting the product a little richer with a life component? It's something that we need to think about. So we have a good product to our members. Then, do these loans that we offer look at our customers, what we call customer-centric, or a product that is looking at the needs? I'll give an example. When we opened it's a microfinance, Isilo Financial Services, because we are young, we said we will not lend beyond 3 million and will not give a period of over 1 month. Because we're young, we're trying to understand how microfinance works. We got a very big deal. Someone with a very good title, of course we did check. He wanted 16 million and he said, give me 3 months. Now, sticking to our guns of 3 million, 1 month, we were losing out on a deal. And we said, let's go for it. The security is good. Customer-centric, or something that is pointing towards that person has come with, enabled us to get the interest we needed with a good security. So having studied the risk around it, we didn't find any reason not to lend. So the product now is looking at that person. So it was tailor-made despite what we had agreed, and it was that as a young microfinance. So I want to see that work through, employed in PSAFE. Look at what you have. Is the risk high? Can we avert this risk? Are we able to go on without, to take it on without necessarily compromising the funds or the members' contributions? So we need to be a little flexible by looking at what the customers need. I heard CEO talk about various products. In my next point will be diversification. At times we want to look at, say, like now everyone is talking about school fees loan, and when the school fees period is done, what other kind of loans can we put on the market to ensure that our members can actually access funds and do something else? So tailor-made, but our people might not know what they will need the money for. That's why people go an extra mile to think. I had one bank which had a wedding loan, and people never thought they should go to the bank to borrow and have a wedding. So they open it to you that, look, between the committee will be you, your wife, and the bank. And the guys need something, but they don't know what they need. So the creativity around what we can push to their faces is what will trigger them to come for what you have. So we have to keep thinking. We have to keep thinking how best we can be able to put something on the market and it's attractive, so people go for it. The last one, as I submit this number 9, it points into the first approach that I had looked at, which is biblical. Meditation and prayer. Of course, this is the thought process that we have to get as we venture into business. You need to get that time of think through, what are we doing? How are we doing it? And eventually it points to where we're seeking knowledge from God, like King Solomon did when he was asked what he wanted. And he said, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. When we get that, it comes through that time when you go back, think, process, and indeed pray for our businesses to stay on track and also follow the guidelines of the industry. That way, we can be able to survive. Allow me to stop here for now. The subject is quite wide, but I know questions can come through and we touch those areas that have not been able to touch if we are to stay afloat. Thank you. Thank you so much. Over to you, Jessica.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for sharing your mind and your thoughts on how to stay afloat. I think there's quite a bit to chew on from what you have shared, and I'll just leave it to the rest of us to go ahead and think about the things that he has shared while we go ahead and ask questions. The chat section is open. So in case you have any questions that you need to ask, go right ahead and place them in there, and we'll come back, we'll double back and answer those questions. So let me go ahead and introduce a second panelist right away. My second panelist is Mr. Stephen Ochola. A lot of us know him from Deliverance Church. He's an elder at Deliverance Church, and we know him and his family from there. So architect Stephen Ochola is a professional with over 20 years of experience. As a partner in charge of design, he plies his trade with Creations Consult Africa, an infrastructure consultancy firm with a presence in East and Central African regions. Stephen has had a hand in the design of many national and regional infrastructure projects. He is also the founder and chief executive of Daybreak Group of Companies with interests in real estate, using Woodstone's development, transport and logistics through Blue Cruise Group, media and entertainment through Crystal Clear, health and nutrition through Power Foods, and e-commerce. Stephen advises on many boards and has a program for startups. His strength is strategic planning, innovation, re-engineering, and restructuring of products and businesses. Stephen Ochola is married to one wife, Lydia Ochola, and together they have 3 amazing children. So, Mr. Ochola, welcome this morning to Financial Literacy. We look forward to hearing from you on what advice you have for us. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jessica, for that warm welcome. And good morning to you all. It's a chilly morning out here in Mutungo where I'm seated. But the words that I've had so far have warmed me up. The words from just concluded speaker, the CEO, Jessica, thank you so much for these wonderful words that you have brought to this seminar or webinar. I will just maybe add on to what our past speakers just said. He's mentioned so many very wonderful and key things. And what I will say is really, it rotates around. I was so excited when he started off with Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. I mean, also me, that's a central scripture for me to always find my bearings out of. I will share a slide. I don't know how I can do this. How do I get my screen on? Okay, I don't know, Jess, if you have a copy of the presentation, or Patricia. I seem to be having some difficulty getting my screen shared here.
Let's see how to be of help. Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's only, I have it on, I'm using my iPad, unless I do a second. Okay, yeah, it looks like it. Okay, good. Thank you so much, PSA, for sharing the screen. I have a couple of slides that I want to just quickly go through. I believe for us to be able to stay afloat or to navigate, just like anything in life, like for example, if you're to become a good swimmer, you know, when you're thrown into the water, you can survive. You can find your way out and you get across to the other side, even without ever knowing how to swim. But it would still be better if you understood and you knew the dynamics of swimming before the time of being thrown into the water. So I want to just quickly go through these slides as an effort towards helping us all understand the dynamics behind the economy. How do we stay afloat? So basically, I want to just give a quick brief. You can go to the next slide. The next slide, please. Okay, Genesis 1:28 gives us what I call the Great Commission. You know, we are all economic beings. We are beings, all of us are thrust into different economies. There is no choice. From the time we are born till the time we die, we are economic beings. Just like Mr. Mbazira said, you know, Genesis 1:28 is a command, it's an instruction. So God expects all of us to be involved economically. Some of you say, me, I'm not into economics, I'm not into business, I'm not into this. But we need to know that at any one time, we are either net consumers or net producers. What does that mean? The summary of your activities at any one time will either make you one who can be categorized as a consumer, meaning that you take in more than you bring out, or the summary of your activities at any one time can make you what we call a net producer, meaning that you give out more than you take in. So I have prepared this slide with these 4 colorful strips over there, just for us to be able to understand. The first strip is basically your life's timeline. The red at the far left is the infancy period. Then the main green is what we consider as your adulthood life, or your supposedly productive life. And then the last red is the old age, the time when we feel, or when you are no longer producing, you're no longer a net producer. Now the normal life, which is the line, the second line there, from infancy until a little bit into adulthood, we are net consumers. That is a normal timeline, a normal life. And then from somewhere into adulthood, all the way into a bit of old age, we become net producers. We begin to produce. And then the tail end of our old age normally is considered as a net consuming period. That is the normal life timeline. Now, the third timeline is what I've called a productive life timeline. Now, a productive life timeline maximizes the period of productivity, the green in the middle. It stretches into your infancy and it stretches into your old age. So a productive life is one which minimizes consumption at the two natural ends, which is infancy and old age. So you find that certain cultures, certain peoples are very productive at an early age, become productive at an early age. For us, standard, they will tell you, go to school, go to university, look for a job, and then you begin to be a net producer in your 20s or sometimes even into your 30s. There are some communities we very well know, like many of our Indian friends, Chinese friends, Arab friends. I'm just using general cultural groupings. Many of them, we find that they become productive at an early age. I had an experience when I was growing up. One brilliant young man of Indian origin, but born in Uganda here. He sold me my first computer. He started selling computers when we were teenagers. He was younger than me, a teenager. He was already selling computers. A few years ago, maybe about 5, 6, 7 years ago, this man was in the media. And the reason he was in the media was because of the great economic exploits he was doing. So I wasn't so surprised. I was saying, no wonder, he started being productive at an early age. So he managed to peak when he was still young. So a productive life timeline would be one which is more green than red. Now, the last bar down there is what I call a dysfunctional life timeline. Now, a dysfunctional one is where the reds suppress the green. In other words, you begin to be productive at a very late age in your timeline, and also you don't produce for long, and soon you become a dependent. You're no longer producing as much, but you're consuming much more. So I just put this in just as a background of what we're discussing today, how to stay afloat. Let's move to the next slide, please. Okay, so having given us to understand the concept of being net producers or net consumers, the summary of our economic activities, I've just put there some scriptures. You can go look them up. 1 Timothy 5:8 and 1 Thessalonians 3:10. At any one time, we are either selling our skills and stroke abilities, that's what we call being employed, or we are selling goods and services, that's what we call being into business, or we are selling ourselves. Now, that is brands. We are very familiar with the first two, skills and abilities, being employed, and then businesses. But today, the selling of brands is becoming very popular, where people are selling themselves as a brand or as a product, where you mention a name and then the name generates an economic activity. Earlier on, when I was preparing this slide, I was looking for an image of a chameleon to put into the slide. So I typed in chameleon in my Google search, and guess what appeared? I was so surprised. I thought I was going to see all shapes and sizes of chameleons, but I saw one gentleman called Chameleon. He filled the whole of my Google search page. When I went to images, it was chameleon, chameleon, Jose Chameleon. His brand has shoved the real chameleon out of the limelight. So that's what I'm talking about there, selling of brands, where you as an individual, you become an economic activity generator. So those are the three different types. Then the fourth one is just a hybrid. Either you're a little bit of all or a little bit of two. It's a mix. So that pie chart there, that Venn diagram kind of shows, there are some who fall just in the job category. There are some who fall in the business category. There are some who fall in the brand category. Then there are some who share. And then what I've put there as red is what we call the sweet spot. The reason why I'm also bringing this, because we have different people attending the seminar. Some of you might think that, well, this seminar is just for businessmen, or this seminar is just for employed people. No, we are all into economic activity. And when there's a shift in the economy, all of us in these different areas get affected. Let's move on to the next slide. Turbulence. Now that I've given a background, I want us now to talk a bit about instability, about turbulence. Where does this turbulence come from? What causes turbulence? What causes economic uncertainty? Next slide. The cause of turbulence. I have a lot of graphs and pictures. I'll just try and explain them in the little time that I have. But the cause of turbulence, the economy is an endless timeline made up of segments. The economy is like one long line, but then this line has different segments in them. Now we experience only that part of the economy which meets with our life timeline. So when we are born into an economy. When we die out of an economy, but the economy goes on. It's interesting, even your birth alone is an economic activity. Your death alone is an economic activity. So everything that we are into is in an economic timeline. And this timeline is made up of different small segments. Now, I've put those segments in different colors: gray, brown, yellow, blue, purple, etc., etc., because each segment has a different flavor. It has a different, it has different things going on. And these segments are called economic regimes or economic dispensations or economic environments, economic climates. People use different names, but the economy is not one uniform thing from day 1 to day 10. Because when you were young, there were certain things you would buy which today are no longer available because the economic dispensation has changed. The economic regime has changed. So turbulence normally occurs when there is a change from one economic regime to another. So I want us to be able to understand that what the cause of turbulence is transition. The cause of turbulence is change. The cause of turbulence is not COVID. The cause of turbulence is not no money, but the cause of turbulence is change from one economic regime to another. Now, when I use the term regime, do not think of governments, do not think of some of these colors might also bias you. You might be thinking I'm talking about FDC to some NUP or something, blue to red. But I am talking about an economic regime being a period where certain economic truths hold. Now that becomes a regime. Now, soon with time, some of those truths begin to fade away, to begin to change, and new truths come into place. Now, when the net effect of the new truths comes into play, the truths change. So that marks a change in the regime. Let's look at this graph a little bit more on the next slide. Yeah, now I've just magnified this other graph, but the area of turbulence is marked between those two spaces, I mean, two colors, red and blue. Now that is what we call the area of turbulence. Let us just follow through. If someone was in the previous economic regime, this one which is marked out blue, there are some people who are at the top of that regime. They are the rulers of the economy at that time, and everything seems to be working for them. Then there are some people who are at the bottom, whom things seem not to be working for them. Now, when one regime shifts to another, there's an overturn. You see that blue curve which goes down. The things which used to work become the things which no longer work. And the things which were not working in the previous regime become the things which work. The different stages are there. You will see the blue guy at a certain point starts asking, saying, it's not responding, you know. We used to go to the market and pay X and get Y, but we are no longer able to get that X. There's a problem until it gets to a point where it is no longer working. Or we used to wake up at 6 and sell goods worth 3 million. Today night is, we wake up even at 4 a.m. By 10 p.m., we've not even sold goods worth 500,000. It seems it's not working until you get to a point where it is no longer working. Now, that is turbulence. That is a period of change. That is a period of regime handover. So staying afloat becomes very important between two different regimes. Staying afloat is very important when things are changing. So it is key that we understand this fact that the cause of turbulence is really not catastrophes. It is just basically when truths, financial truths start shifting. Like, for example, we've just come out of what we call the pandemic, the COVID pandemic. Now, there are certain truths. The pandemic was a trigger, but then the change actually happened in that today there are certain companies that have hit the top. They used to be at the bottom. One example is the whole health industry, sanitizers and all these masks and etc. I mean, before COVID, how many of you knew that there was something called sanitizer? There was probably very few people knew, and very people probably used it. But today you'll find sanitizers everywhere. People now have become accustomed. You know, I need to sanitize my hands, I need to sanitize this, I need to sanitize. COVID seems now to be behind us, but sanitizing, I'm just using that as an example, seems to be with us. So I'll leave that there. I'll not explain that too much. I want us to be able to understand that staying afloat is very important during the period of turbulence. That is where it makes sense to stay afloat. Now, staying afloat would mean you ride from the blue, come, and then at the point where blue and red intersects, you jump off the blue line onto the red line and you go up. Now, that is what it means to stay afloat. Now, if you stay on to the blue line forever, you will go into relegation. Now, some people begin on the red line. As they are moving, they see a blue line and they say, I've always wanted to be part of this blue movement. They jump onto it, and guess what? They end at the bottom of the next regime. So us, in very simple terms, we want to answer the question, how do I come down the blue curve and jump onto the red curve at the right time? Because if you jump onto the red curve too early, you might sink. But if you jump onto it at the right time, you will get there. At times you delay and you miss it. So let's move on now to staying afloat. Next slide. So how do we stay afloat? I want to use what I call the 4A anchor rule. The 4A anchor rule, this is basically 4 things that become very important for you to stay afloat. Okay, let's move on. The first thing is agility. Agility is the ability to change direction in the shortest possible time. That image there you're seeing is a graphic that it represents some office workers who are. It's a team building activity where you stand on a seesaw, and then all of a sudden the direction changes. How do you remain afloat when things change suddenly? That is through being agile. Agility is the ability to change direction in the shortest possible time. So I want to ask you, how fast can you change your product? How fast can you change your service? How fast can you change your skill? Now, if you can answer those questions, that becomes a measure of how agile you are. Because when things begin to change, the skill you had, the skill you invested 15 years of education into can easily change. Some of us, we get so stuck and we say, man, I studied. I took 10 years in this. I took 5 years, and you're telling me to drop this right now. No, we continue clinging onto that skill. But agility requires that you should be able to quickly change your skill, or quickly change your service, or quickly change your product. Move to the next slide. I will not go into the details of this, but these are the things that the inputs into being an agile business or an agile individual. You need to be able to deal with change. You need to maintain drive. You need to enable new ways of working, and you need to stay connected. I'm just gleaming over the presentations. I know we don't have much time, so I'll not get into the details. Some of these we can talk about them another time. Let's go to the next, second A. Now, the second A is what I call adaptivity. Now, this is the chameleon picture I was looking for, and it was giving me a different chameleon because of the brand. Now, adaptivity, ability, this is your ability to know when, what, and how. Adaptivity is basically an intuition call, to understand the times and know what you ought to do. So that's adaptivity. When, what, and how. How willing can you change your product? How willing can you change your service? How willing can you change your skill? Some of us, we are very averse to being adaptive because of historical reasons, because of many of the challenges we've gone through, because of the struggles we've gone through. You end up being very rigid. You cannot easily adapt. This is different from being agile. Agile is speed and flexibility. This one is resolve. Adaptivity is resolve. Your mindset. How do you apply your mindset to know that now is the time, this is how I'm going to do it, and this is what is going to change. Let's move on to the next slide, which gives us a bit of, it's a graphic. Let's move on to the next. Now, this is the adaptive cycle. Again, these slides will be available. You can read through and see the different 4 quadrants in the adaptive cycle. There is conservation to the top right. Conservation is where there is slow growth and we are largely accumulating and we spend a lot on maintaining. That is conservation. Now, soon from conservation, there is collapse or release. Now, at this point, whatever capital you had starts diminishing. Now, one who is sharp and is alert to being adaptive will quickly move into the quadrant of reorganization. Many people want to keep it as a circle. From collapse, they want to. There's a natural struggle to go back to conservation. The things which have been working, we want them to work again. The businesses we've been doing, we want them to. We want to conserve. But then adaptivity requires that you go to reorganize, you go to the other quadrant. And from reorganizing, that's where now you get growth. you come to the lower quadrant, you start exploiting the new opportunities. Again, this one lifts you up to a growth level where, again, you start maintaining or conserving, but you have to be aware that conservation will soon bring you down to collapse, which again has to go to reorganize. It's a loop. So again, that's just to let us know that it's very important to be adaptive during this time of uncertainty. Move on to the next the third A. The third A is absorption, the ability to take loss without quitting. How much, there are two questions I'll ask here. How much can you carry, or how much can you take on? You know, when we are in times of uncertainty, there's a lot of loss, there's a lot of, failures, there's a lot of so many things. Many of us do not have the ability to absorb. So whenever you see the first red, you see the first loss, you quit. You say, you know what? This thing is, I've lost. I can't manage. The economy, the this and the other. But then the third A is absorption. How much can you carry? We need to have carrying capacity. We need to have reserves. Now, this for a business, for example, we'll be talking about capital reserves. How much money do you have to take on the hit? If, for example, they closed shops for 1 year, do you have enough to sustain the components of the business through the 1 year until they open again? So that's what absorption is about. Many businesses went bust because they couldn't maintain during the time of uncertainty. Now, the other thing is you need to roll with the punch. I put that expression there. To roll with the punch means two things. One, it can mean you go with the flow. In other words, whatever is happening, go with it. But then I want to go with the second meaning, which is, when a boxer when you're being taught boxing, they will tell you that when your opponent sends you a blow and you don't have time to dodge it, the best thing is you go with that blow, you go with that punch, and then the effect of the punch will be less. So if, for example, they're punching your head, don't turn your head the opposite way. Turn your head the same way the punch is going, and then it will limit the effect of the punch. That's what it means to roll with the punch. So your ability to absorb is one of the things that will keep you to stay afloat. Let's go on to the next slide. The fourth A is awareness. Your ability to know what has moved. Your ability to know what has moved. Awareness. Now, there are two things that we deal with, and then those two things one of them can move or both of them can move. It is the market and the product. Whatever you're doing, if it's a service, if it's a business, if it's goods you're selling, if it is a job you are at, there are two things only. There is the market, your place of employment, or the people you sell to, or the people you offer the service to, and then there is the product itself. Now, the product is basically your skill or the goods you sell and etc. So during times of uncertainty, these two things tend to move. Either the market shifts, or the product shifts, or both of them shifts. Let's move to the next slide. So this graph again shows us different scenarios, 4 scenarios. Scenario number 1 is when both the market and the product are in the same place. Now it calls for what we call market penetration. How do I deepen my presence in the market? Now, the second quadrant, number 2, is when same product but new market. Now, this is how you quickly change market development. How do I start developing this new market? Product is the same, but the market has changed. For example, the people who are buying your product, all of a sudden, either due to demographics or due to different things, have changed, or due to regulation, they have changed. So your response should be, how do I develop this new market? Quadrant number 3 is when you have a new product, but in the same old market. You need to focus on the product development. And then the last one is when both the market and the products change or move or shift, then this calls for diversification. So this is how you stay afloat in the area of being aware. Those are the 4 A's. I just want to now quickly go to practical steps, and then I'll end there my presentation. Practical steps, go on to the next slide. Basically, during turbulent times, the first thing I would say is preserve, and I've put in brackets, not save. Some of us think preservation is the same as saving. Preserve, but do not save capital. And I'm not limiting it only to finance. Finance, human, everything that is capital to you during times of turbulence, you need to preserve them. Now, these are the 3 preservation methods. 1, you need to be frugal. I already had the speaker, my fellow panelists mentioning about that. You know, you need to be frugal, meaning that you need to know how to spend. If, for example, you used to spend as a business, for example, if maybe the decision making was at department head level, you can probably lift up the decision making now to management level. You say, for the next 1 month, every spending decision is no longer being made by the department, but by the head. Now that's being frugal. Or even as an individual, maybe you, as a family, you say, children, you're no longer going to be making decisions to do this and the other. It's now going to be. So that's being frugal, being wise on your spending. The second thing is brutal, being brutal in the sense that you begin to eliminate certain things you used to spend your money on. You be brutally honest with yourself and say, I'm no longer going to spend money on this, that, and the other, going to eat out or etc. because of this situation. Then the third one is being creative. Think out new ways of doing things with the little money that you have. You know, make sure that the $1 can walk 2 miles as opposed to the 1 mile it used to walk. Now that's being creative. Just to speak a little bit about the preservation and not saving. Many times people think when times are hard, that is the time now you need to save more. No, you actually need to save more when times are good. Because when you save when times are bad, capital erosion is even higher during times of turbulence. You have seen what is happening to the Uganda shilling. You know, it's being eroded. If you put in 1 million shillings in the bank, after a few months, it will be 900,000. Not that the money will be removed, but its purchasing power wanes faster during times of turbulence. So it is not a time to save. It is a time to be frugal, to be brutal, and to be creative at that time. The second thing is to limit capital outflow. Again, this is finance and human. Limit capital outflow. What do I mean? Go for low finance, high put business options. For example, if you were into the business of, say, producing certain things and you had inputs which were high in terms of finance, now you need to start looking for options where you have less financial input into that business idea or business option. Go for businesses that, for example, home industries came up a lot during the time of the lockdown, and many of those are low finance but high output. People started doing backyard gardening. I mean, you don't need much. You just need to probably buy seeds, a little bit of fertilizer and etc. And then the rest you are doing it yourselves, as opposed to the other options. The second thing in terms of limiting capital outflow is sell more skills than goods and services, because skills will not cost you much. Goods and services will cost you some money because you'll have to buy goods, you'll have to pay for certain services which you're going to sell. But then when you have your own skills, your own training, this is the time for you to go and learn a skill. Go and learn something online. Go and learn something in a class somewhere and sell those skills. That is what happens during the times of turbulence. Go and look for, sell more skills than the other things. Then the third and last practical step is to wisely invest for the next move. Like you already saw in the earlier graphs, there's got to be a new normal, as they say. Things are going to stabilize, but things will no longer be as they were before. So you need to begin during turbulent times. We are so locked up into there's no money, there's no school fees, there's no the other. We forget that there is a new dispensation coming on. So this is the time for you to wisely invest for the next move, and you invest in assets and in skills. What assets are going to be the drivers of the next move? What skills are going to be the drivers of the next move? This is the time for you to begin investing in those things. So those are the three practical ways I would want to leave with us as we discuss staying afloat during turbulent financial times. I'll hand over back to the moderator. Thank you so much for listening, and God bless you.
Amen. Thank you so much, Mr. Stephen Ochola and Mr. Patrick Mbazida. So just to help us bring this home, I'd like to just ask the gentlemen, based on their presentation, but also based on your experience in the many things that you've shared with us, what are you, both of you, maybe you could both just give us a bit of your mind on how you were able to practically stay afloat, practical ways, be it in business or in home finances or in whichever other sphere of finance. Maybe if you could just point out for us a practical example of, I don't know, so my business was going through this, and then this is what I employed to do this and this and the other, and this is how we managed to stay afloat. So maybe we can start with Mr. Patrick, and then we can double back and come to Mr. Ochola to hear that practical example.
Thank you, Jessica. Indeed, my brother has broken it down so well in terms of, well, it seems he was looking at my script. It's so interesting how two people can present on the same thing, and indeed it's the same. From what he has actually submitted, we did a bit of that as a group of, we were 14. We thought this is a time for us to put funds together. You know, during the lockdown, people had hope, but the things to do around that time. A person who probably wanted to supervise building of a structure around that time, they had some little money, they started, and then halfway they could not complete what they were doing. So they needed some finance. Around that time, we thought we should, away from the SACCO, where I'm a chairman business committee or investment arm of the SACCO, we came up with a microfinance and we said, guys, let's just save 210,000 every month. And you know, that's the time where you're thinking there is a need for money on you, but to say this money can be put together, help out these guys who are building, and indeed it has started paying off. So while I'm in insurance as my core, but the credit line came in and I'm thinking this is an opportunity. So around that time, the creativity was, what is the problem? Financing projects, because people are now available. They are not at their workplaces. So that was one thing that we really, on my side, as a group of 14, we were targeting 20. We said, we can go. Allow me to stop at that with the creativity of this, having seen the problem, and we came up with the solution. So we're praying to God to be able to see us through, seeing this microfinance grow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patrick. We'll now hear from Mr. Stephen Ochola.
Thank you so much, Jessica. On a practical side, we, like you read in the introduction, I'm involved into real estate and basically, we've got apartments, rental units, and that side of real estate. So during the lockdown or during the times of turbulence, one of the things that we did, because we knew that people were not moving much, so the options of people leaving houses was a bit limited, and yet the people were having challenges in payments because they were not working. So we had to find ways of supplementing some of these shortfalls, which we knew we were going to experience. But at the same time, of course, we engaged with these people to make sure that we restructured their rental payments. But then soon after that, when movements started, we had to creatively think of how do we make our $1 move 10 kilometers as opposed to the 5 kilometers. So what we did, some of the rental units, we took them off the market, and then we converted them to what is popularly known as the Airbnbs. We made them ready for short stay people who would come and say, I want to stay for 1 night, I want to stay for 2 nights, and then they pay a premium. So we managed to multiply, a unit would maybe be vacant, say for 15 days in a month, but then the other 15 days for which someone stays in or different people stay in, it covers what would have been paid by a normal tenant for 1 month, maybe by 3 or 4 or 5 times even that same amount. So we had to make that decision, knowing that the uncertain times are going to create certain market shifts. And surely enough, I was speaking to a friend of mine in the hotel industry, and he mentioned that the clients in many of these hotels, there was a shift in the market. Those days, there were NGOs, there were big people who would come and just pay, for a whole year for the expatriates who are coming. But things now had changed. These people had migrated to smaller homes and smaller houses. So we bore witness to know that, yes, now the cheese has moved. As they say, who moved my cheese? The cheese had moved, so we had to tap into that. And that is how we managed to keep afloat in these times, Jessica.
Thank you, Mr. Ochola and Mr. Mbazira. Maybe one final question while we bring this to a close. And I know that you've both given us instances now of how you practically managed to stay afloat. So my question now is, taking that knowledge that you have and the expertise that you had to be able to work that out, what would you say, or what advice would you give to, because you've both talked about, changing markets and changing trends and all of that, but then a lot of Ugandans, let me speak for Ugandans, who have gone to school, have a degree, have got a job, are still entirely dependent on that source of income. So much that there is not a lot of, say, diversification in income flow or in different forms of income. So what would your piece of advice for our current market, our current economy, the current times, for the young people, people with young families, people who maybe do not have families yet, and maybe even for the person who has a family, but COVID came, they lost their job, and it's like it has thrown their whole world into disarray. What would your practical advice be? Again, we'll start with Mr. Mbazira and then come to architect Stephen Ochola. So over to you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Jessica. At this point, it's actually more of breaking it down to the final detail of what it is that individual, be it a young graduate or somebody who has not been able to expand their sphere beyond what they have, or if they've lost anything. First, it still goes back to what we said, Genesis 1:28. Since it's a command and someone stays, they've not moved, that would mean they are not going to get out of the situation they're in. So we're working on the mindset. If we appreciate that there is something that should be done, that's the first thing. Mindset is key in trying to push what we've had. Like a lot has been shared, but if we can't put it in practice, we would have wasted a lot of time. So everyone in their own way of thinking has to be encouraged. So we're talking about the mind now. When you believe it can, indeed, it will. There are so many examples of people who have actually left employment and never thought there would be something much better for them outside than the job that keeps them 8 to 5. But when I say 8 to 5, that means you wake up at as early as 5:30. So between 5:30 a.m. and probably 7 p.m., you're actually going to work, you're at work and coming back home. There is nothing in between. But the mindset change can push someone to thinking outside the box. I know people who do baking on the side. They get an order at work. When they go back home, they bake the cake and go with that cake maybe to their workmates. At one time, they feel like I'm putting in a lot more at my workplace where I'm paid less. Why don't I devote now myself to the cake business, cookies, motivation speaking, because also you need some bit of time to do the research. Imagine Mr. Ochola was looking for chameleon and then another chameleon came. So if you don't have time to even pick the right chameleon because the job is on your head, then it's going to be very hard. We can't talk enough about mindset because honestly, it's laid out here on the table. These are things that you can do and change the world. But when you don't move, like Genesis says, and also have the faith in Philippians 4:13, I can do. Someone has said in the chat that mindset is not easy. So we begin by these sessions. When you keep, like I said, we remind ourselves, we already know, but we're not doing. So we keep encouraging ourselves. Actually, your questions are good, practical examples. If I told you I did this and we're now smiling, that means I'm not just being theoretical. So the question which looks at the practical example is supposed to encourage. Slowly by slowly, the mindset can change and then people do what is available. Kindly look at a tree and see furniture. You see door frames. That's the only way we can be able to get people to appreciate. When you look at a cow, look at milk, cheese, butter, all those things. That means you can be able to convert what you see, because when the world was given to us, the earth was shapeless, formless, and then we begin to mold it into what we want it to be. With the command, you have been blessed. So why don't you go ahead and do, because the verse says, God bless them, and then ordered, go, be fruitful. That means go produce. Kindly, if there's any youth on the call, please be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth. Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you, Patrick. Over to you, Stephen.
Thank you, Jess, for that question. Before I get into the practicals, I just want to say something quick. Productivity killers. I mean, Genesis 1:28. But then there are certain things which kill. Somebody asked in the Q&A section. I just want to quickly say something about it. Cultural beliefs, social limitations, education systems, all these things can be productivity killers. So I would want us to unshackle ourselves from some of these things. You know, your education should not be the final controller of your productivity. You know, being productive can start even before your education is complete. The one doesn't lead into the other. One is meant just to supplement the other. Your being productive is central. Your education rides along the central line to make sure that it's much more fruitful. But for us, we have turned tables the other way around. Our education is the center, it is the middle, then productivity has to follow along. If anything that comes to you that demands for you to be productive, you always first put it in the mirror. Was I taught this? Is this in my profession? Is this in my line? If it's not, you kick it away. Now that is wrong. We need to know that education serves our productivity. Social limitations must serve our productivity. Cultural demands must serve our productivity. So if there's anything that in the society or in culture is limiting your productivity, then there's a problem. I really encourage us, those of you who are parents, let your children begin to be productive as early as possible. At 5, at 6, at 7, at 4, let them begin to be productive. Now, to answer the question practically, what should one do now? Currently, we are experiencing a shift. The bigger shift, the bigger turbulence is there is a handover from what I would call the corporate economic regime. Now we are getting into the social economic regime. Now the social meaning that anything that is social based is controlling the economy now. Previously, anything that was corporate based was controlling the industry. Corporates were the key guys. Corporates were the ones who were taking the most educated people. Corporates were the ones commanding what the banks should do. But now there is a shift. We are in the turbulent times, and the next dispensation or the next regime we are getting into is the social-led regime. So practically, I would say, prepare yourselves by entering into the drivers of a social-led economic regime. What are some of those drivers? One, a social-led economic regime, key to it is creativity, entertainment, health and fitness, brand awareness. All these are different sectors or drivers of the social economy. I mean, today, there's about a month ago, so some friends of mine landed. They came to Uganda for a wedding. The guy was an American, then he came with a friend from Kenya. Now they came, I don't know the circumstances. He just called me one time, hey, you know what, we've lost our luggage. I need a suit. We called up a guy for the suit. They took the suit. Now, when it came to calling up, they didn't have cameramen. Calling up, it became a headache. It became a problem. Those days, cameramen were everywhere. But today, much as we have smartphones, people who hold cameras are now more busy, they're more engaged than they used to be in the corporate economic dispensation. Now, that's just one. Image has become something. So get into that field, get into design, get into image industry, get into the creatives with regard to branding and personal experiences and etc. Because that's the new dispensation we are going into. Health and fitness, it has become more important today. People were saying that health and fitness was much more important because people were staying at home during COVID. But people have left, but health and fitness industry is just shooting through the roof because people are now more aware of how they want to feel, how they want to, because it is society-based economy we are into. If people say you don't look good, it affects you more than previously. They'll tell you you just need to put on a tie and a suit. That was the corporate industry. Corporate image was important, but now social image is more important. How does the society see you? Do they see you as fat? Do they see you as fit? Do they see you as a weakling? Do they see you as a diabetic? Do they see you as... So all these things now become the drivers. If you want to get into this new dispensation, health and fitness is an important one. Entertainment. People now have a higher demand for entertainment. People are saying that entertainment, Netflix, and all these things was because people were staying home. People came back from home, but now there's a greater demand for entertainment. Almost anything that is put up on YouTube or wherever is consumed. One of the local Ugandan guys who does comedy and etc. He was so surprised that he does, and nowadays he doesn't even write scripts. He just does something as he's traveling in a taxi, does something, and the thing shoots through the roof because people are now, the society is now demanding for entertainment because it is a social-driven economic dispensation that we are getting into. So that's my practical advice. I would say young men, young women, old men, old women begin to migrate into the social-driven economic activities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow. I think that's quite a bit to think about. You have given us quite something to think about. It's what's the word? A paradigm shift. That's what we used to say. It really is practically a paradigm shift, and like scripture has said, let he who has ears hear. So we shall hear what has been said to us and go and find practical ways of putting it into practice, and definitely doing research, learning skills and all of that. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I think that you have given us quite a bit to think about, quite a bit to reflect on. And I know that a lot of us, especially those who have heard what has been said, will go and make these practical changes. Hopefully not just right now with all the excitement, but then also later on follow it up. Yes, so thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you, all of you who have managed to log in and those who have watched over Facebook and YouTube and all of that. I'd like to take this opportunity to once again invite the CEO of PSEV, Mrs. Rosette, to come and just wrap this up and then close it off for this morning. Over to you, Rosette.
Thank you so much, Jessica. You've done great as our moderator this morning. And thank you so much, our panelists, Mr. Mbazira Patrick and Architecture Stephen Ochola. I have learned so much. I think what I can go away with today has been remembering the commission, be fruitful, the mandate, be fruitful, multiply. So even in our daily lives, we need to be fruitful in our businesses and whatever we are doing, so that will bring God glory. But the practical steps that I've taken away, the steps that have been shared by Stephen Ochola, that are just, they seem to be so simple, and I believe we can do them in our individual lives and also in our businesses. Just re-echo them. I think there were three major ones. Preserve your capital, limit your capital outflow, and wisely invest that capital. If it's something that we can put in our individual lives practically and in our businesses, I believe by the time we close this year, we would have done ourselves very, very good. And thank you so much, our members, for joining in today, and our board members send you greetings. Would like to encourage you to continue saving, continue buying shares and purchasing shares with PSEV. And trust me, by the time we come to this end of year, we'll be in a better place. Thank you so much for hearing the call to attend this financial literacy training. And we wish you the best. And we believe that this session has been a mind opener to many of us. For me personally, I am grateful that I've attended this seminar. Thank you so much once again. And I think we will bring this to a close, just in a word of prayer. And let me just pray, then we'll close this session. Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for what you have, the knowledge that you've given us through our participants, through our panelists this day, oh God. And Lord, we pray that whatever we have learned, that we will practically go and do. And Lord, I pray that devourer will not come to steal any of the knowledge that we have gotten to do, but it will give us energies to walk through the year 2022. Lord, we give you thanks. In Jesus' name we have prayed. Amen. Blessings
Amen.
and blessings.
Amen.
Blessings.
Amen.
May we all have a good day.
Rise up, rise up, Africa, rise. Africa, rise. Hey. Oh, you've been hard, your past's been hard. I know you're bitter, you let it linger. Years you've lost, pains you've stored. Do you not see it? God has a purpose for you. I am doing a new thing. See now it springs up, waves in the desert, streams in the wasteland, doing a new thing. See now it springs up right now, oh Africa, do you perceive it? Eh, eh. What once was lost, God is restoring. Open your eyes now, receive his outpouring. Wisdom and might, power from on high. Do you not see it? God has revealed it to you. I am doing a new thing. See now it springs up, waves in the desert, streams in the wasteland, doing a new thing. See now it springs up right now, oh Africa, do you perceive it? Doing a new thing. See now it springs up, waves in the desert, streams in the wasteland, doing a new thing. See now it springs up right now, oh Africa, do you perceive it? You lily, you lily. He says, I know the plans I have for you, to give you hope, to prosper you, restore you, get ready, rise up, declares the Lord. I know the plans I have for you, to give you hope, to prosper you, restore you, get ready, rise up, declares the Lord. I know the plans I have for you, to give you hope, to prosper you, restore you, get ready, rise up, declares the Lord. Your maker, declares the Lord. Your savior, declares the Lord. Your helper, defender, strong tower in time of need, Africa. Yeah. See now it springs right now, right here. He's doing it for you. Rise up. See now it springs right now. Jehovah, he's doing it for you, Africa. Doing a new thing. Do you see now it springs up, waves in the desert, streams in the wasteland, doing a new thing. See now it springs